back to the channel, guys. Today we're doing another top 10 finished manhwa. If you haven't already checked out the first video on this, please do check it out up here. There's a link, and come back to this video afterwards. But without a doubt, let's check out the top 10 finished manhwa. At number 10, we have Return of the Aid Mage. This is a manhwa that could have been so much more. I honestly think that the author kind of got fed up of telling this story, so he decided to drop it after a while. This came out at the same time as Return of the Unrivaled Spear Knight, which I will say is a much better manhwa, but is not finished yet, so it doesn't count on this list. It follows a mage betrayed by the royal family and brought back to the past, where he can do his quest to try and save his family and save everyone that he lost along the way of his life. The character powers up very quickly, and we don't spend much time with him as a kid. He powers up to being an adult very quickly, and he goes basically on a quest to become the head mage and to basically support a different side of the royal family, and the story becomes a little bit of an identity crisis. I will still say it's an interesting read and worth checking out, but it doesn't stand to toe with the rest of the month's list. At number 9 is Unholy Blood. Following a vampire in a world of vampire slayers, we get a person basically that is a vampire slaying other vampires. This got some Blade vibes, but I will still say there's not a lot of series like this in the manhwa space, particularly with a female protagonist, and I found it was an interesting change of venue when it came to that kind of vibe of the story. It's generally pretty good, and it's finished, and it's worth checking out, absolutely, and I think it's underloved, and check it out. At number 8 is Dice. This one is not the most beautiful manhwa you'll see, but I will still say it has a compelling as hell story with a character that in a way it's stuff that you can imagine yourself going through. He's a kid that's down on his luck. He doesn't have luck with girls, school, grades. He's just not great. He's not going to stand out in any way in the real world. But he gets basically connects with a game that allows him to play with dice, basically, that changes his fate in a way. And it's not a perfect system. It's not something that's always going to give him a good outcome. But it creates a whole dynamic of storytelling that I think is somewhat different than anything else I've seen in the manhwa space. So if you haven't checked out Dice already, jump into it. It's one that I think is a little underappreciated. At number 7, we have Flow. In a world where you have the ability to summon a beast or animal that'll follow you around, Flow has our main character basically accessing a very special one for himself. This world, like, your entire value is based on your spirit animal and the animal connected to you. And the art style of this story, as well as the whole manhwa itself, really fits with the name of the manhwa itself. It really does flow in a very weird way. I think this is a gem of a manhwa that is super underappreciated that you should check out. I'll take a little pause here and give 2 honorable mentions of finished manhwa on the Chinese side, because I don't quite have a list for that here, and I do want to give them their spotlight. The first is Master of Gu, or Reverend Insanity. It is a masterpiece of a manhwa. On a list of comparing it to Korean manhwa, it would rank in the top 10 of that first list for sure. It's a phenomenal series that didn't quite get the ending it deserved or the second half that it deserved, but the ride that you got on your way there was phenomenal. Following a very villainous protagonist. I feel like Chinese manhwa do those the best, and this character that's sent basically 500 years into the future, is it in the past or the future? I don't even remember, but it's just the idea that this character gets a second chance at life, and man, he owns some people, and it's fantastic to read. The second is, of course, Fen Shen. If you haven't read Fen Shen, it is beautiful. It follows a protagonist trying to honor his father in a way and get revenge against the gods that look down on them. It really is a tale of humanity versus the gods, and in the end, a way of coexistence as well. And the action is fantastic, but this is all about the visuals. I have never seen something that looks like Fen Shen, and the art style alone makes it worth it. It reminds me of some of the panels from Berserk, perhaps not to the same extreme, but I do think that it's a special, special manhwa. At number 6, we have Iwan Class. This is back on the manhwa side. Iwan Class has a great adaptation on the Netflix side, but I will say Iwan Class follows a protagonist that basically beats up the wrong kid in school. He's trying to stand up to people that he needs to stand up to, but that ends up sending him to jail, where he ends up losing basically everything that he had, family and everything. And it's about him starting a bar slash diner with friends and the things that happened in between. And that type of storytelling just works so well and is done so good for these characters. And it's a compelling narrative that makes you want to read chapter after chapter. It's a very different read, but it's absolutely worth your time. At number 5, we have Chosu Saves the World. This one is honestly super interesting. Main character starts the story, he's watching the apocalypse. There's a meteor hitting the earth and everyone is going to die. It's pretty straightforward. He gets sent back in time and basically he knows what's going to happen, and now he needs to make his life fit. There's no superpowers in the story or anything like that. He needs to use science and figure out how, I think within 5 years, he needs to save humanity from this disaster. And it's a compelling narrative of a character that goes where he needs to go. A story that isn't too long either and really doesn't feel bloated by any means. But again, great character relationships and a very easy to get behind quest to save humanity. At number 4 is Boblade Spirit. And I will say that Boblade Spirit is a deeply flawed manhwa for me. I find that it's a story that it skips a lot of styles along the way. It starts off as this comedy thing where old man is training a kid to inherit his martial arts. He finds a blade and a bow and he starts this martial arts adventure, and he becomes this very serious quest later on, mix of serious and comedy. There's a kid that's introduced later on that really did not work for me, I'll be perfectly honest, and that's what made me less enjoy it. But it is a completed manhwa that follows beautiful visuals, a really complex character that goes through some ebbs and flows of what is right and what is wrong in that world and finds what's worth fighting for at the same time. For that alone, it's phenomenal. I dropped off of it a little bit, but I did finish it, and I still think it's a fantastic read, worth being where I put it on the list. If you're still here, please do take a moment to like, subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell, and keep watching for more content on the channel. At number 3, we have one of my favorites, and that is The Promised Orchid. The Promised Orchid is, I feel like this manhwa was never talked about, even though I will say it has some of the best visuals you'll find in manhwa. Okay, maybe not the best visuals, but the art style really resembles those of The Breaker and The Breaker New Waves. There's some artist overlap there, and that's why. The protagonist literally looks like the same character from that story. He's not. But the storytelling is great. The fighting is fantastic, as always, with this art style. I will say the story wraps up a little bit too quickly in the second half. It feels like it rushes through it. But still, I find that the characters are very compelling, and their story is a good one. I wish they had had the chance to make it a little bit more developed, but I think for what it is, it's fantastic. At number 2, we have one of the OG slice of life / vampire stories, and that is Noblesse. I hadn't realized Noblesse was from the same creator as Eliseed, and thinking about it now, it makes perfect sense. There's this huge emphasis on relationships, brotherhood, a kinship between people that are family as well as people that are friends, and I think that it's one of the strengths of the story. I will say it felt a little bit too much like that for me when I was reading it. When the vampire things happen and the powers come out, it is awesome. And I just wanted more of that when I was reading it. But nonetheless, the slice of life stuff is still a lot of fun. Great comedy, though I wish a lot of the humans were not in the story at all because they're kind of pointless. But that's kind of the heart of where our dear main character is going, and that is that slice of life side of things. So if you haven't checked out Noblesse, it's one of the OGs, hundreds of chapters to check out. Check it out. And at number 1, finishing this year, we have Tomb Raider King. So Tomb Raider King was a manhwa I had dropped a good while back because I found it got a little repetitive in its storytelling, but honestly, it's fantastic. It has some of the best itemization that exists out there, a really interesting world of deities and gods, and these dungeons opening up where there's tons of loot and gold and items, and it's just fun and interesting, and the story kind of goes to crazy places in it. And right now it's currently telling its after stories, but the main story is finished already of this one. So if you have not checked it out, you definitely should check out Tomb Raider King. It is fantastic. It also has some you can buy it in hard copy, and it's fantastic and looks great, so you can also do that. If you like this list, please do like, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more.